Within the ironclad walls of the Academy for Offensive Mages, one absolute law reigns supreme. Healers are trash. But our protagonist is about to shatter that delusion. Will stands at the pinnacle of restoration magic, yet he walks into the lion's den. To the elite students here, his enrollment is nothing short of a joke. One instructor takes it upon himself to crush this arrogance, challenging the boy to a brutal mock battle. The duel explodes into motion. The instructor launches a crushing earth prison, but Will weaves through the chaos, amplifying his agility with high-tier recovery buffs. A stone maw attempts to swallow him whole, but he dances out of reach. Then, the predator becomes the prey. He flashes into close quarters, his dagger seeking blood. But steel alone cannot pierce absolute defense. The teacher cloaks himself in impenetrable fortress armor, sneering at the feeble attempts of a support mage. But Will's eyes gleam with a terrifying strategy. You see, in this realm, mages shackle their true potential, a safety mechanism to prevent their mana from tearing their mortal vessels apart. Crossing that line invites self-destruction, but if Will shatters that limiter, he releases a cataclysmic surge of power, even as his own bones turn to dust, and that is a price he pays with a smile. After all, he is the master of restoration. He lunges forward, his fist glowing with suicidal energy. A sickening crunch echoes as his own arms pulverize, driving straight through the instructor's unbreakable defense. The teacher collapses before he can even process his defeat. Total knockout. But what drives the divine healer to walk the path of carnage? It stems from a past life of impotence, a timeline where reliance on others led to his grave. This is the chronicle of his despair. Logic dictates that perfection in one's craft commands respect. But for our hero, his divine gift became his curse. Betrayal strikes not from the enemy, but from his own commander's blade. Will was just a man with a god-tier talent for restoration, a singularity in the magical world, a miracle worker without equal. He could reverse death itself, treating gruesome disfigurements like mere scratches, a severed limb, a trifle. In seconds, flesh and bone would knit back together. At the time, he stood on the precipice of doom, supporting the last bastion of humanity against the demon lords. These were the abyssal legions that had already reduced the glorious kingdom of Grandal to ash. The soldiers fought with the ferocity of cornered beasts, desperate to hold back a tide that had already swallowed the world. But amidst this slaughter, Will was defenseless, a lamb among wolves. His sole duty was to drag broken men back from the gates of the underworld, forcing them to fight another day. But let's face the grim truth. Mortal steel is useless against nightmares spawned from the deepest pits of hell. The front lines became a meat grinder. Soldiers returned in pieces, and with grim diligence, our boy stitched them back together. Until the human spirit finally snapped, the endless cycle of agony and resurrection became a torture worse than death. They accepted their extinction. Hope was dead. They yearned for the sweet release of the grave rather than endure one more second of this hell. That is why the captain's blade pierced Will's chest. In their eyes, the healer was a demon who refused to let them rest, ignorant of their suffering. With their spirits broken, the defense line crumbled. They abandoned their posts, opening the floodgates for the Titans to trample the last embers of the kingdom. Will lay bleeding, forced to watch the apocalypse unfold. His friends, his home, his world, erased in an instant. As a colossal dragon eclipsed the sun, the terrible truth crashed down on him. His greatest gift had been their greatest chain. If only his hands held the power to destroy rather than mend, perhaps he could have forged a different destiny. Fueled by a final, burning defiance, he snatched a simple stone from the blood-soaked earth and charged the beast, a flea challenging a god. The dragon's breath incinerated him instantly, but death was not the end. He snapped his eyes open. 5 years in the past, he had returned to the days before he was crowned the Saint of Healing, a title he now loathed with every fiber of his being. He refuses to walk that path of regret again. He turns his back on the healing order and sets his sights on the path of destruction. His target, the Schwartz Academy, the hallowed grounds dedicated to the absolute mastery of war. In this era, the laws of magic are rigid. One cannot master both the gentle light of healing and the destructive fires of combat. You must choose. You must. But Will is here to shatter that paradigm. He will reclaim what he lost. He will weaponize his knowledge of the future. He will become an anomaly, a mage who can mend bone and shatter it in the same breath. To set the gears of fate in motion, he must breach the gates of the most elite military institution in existence, the Schwartz Academy. This is the crucible that forges legends. It was here that the greatest war mage of his previous timeline was born. But a massive wall stands in his way. Will is registered as a healer, and Schwartz Academy has no open doors for support classes. In this world, the prestigious academy is a playground for the elite, where nobles squander mountains of gold just to force their incompetent heirs through the gates. But our protagonist, he stands before this mountain with empty pockets. Even if he sold his healing arts day and night, the enrollment deadline would crush him long before he raised the coin. As he drowns in these dark thoughts, the door creaks open. It is his sister. Seeing her standing there, breathing and alive, sends a shockwave through his heart. Tears he cannot control instantly blur his vision. Misunderstanding his trembling, she worries that he must be in physical pain. Will frantically wipes away the evidence of his sorrow, forcing a smile and lying that a speck of dust simply caught in his eye. But beneath that facade, his soul is screaming in triumph. She is here. She is alive. The fires of determination roar to life within him. In this second life, he swears to shatter the tragic fate that once consumed her. No, not just her. He will save everyone he failed to protect in the timeline before. Suddenly, a path reveals itself in the chaos of his mind. The gears of destiny begin to turn as he formulates a plan. But to understand his gambit, we must first look at the titans ruling this world, the Magic Academy Federation. It is the supreme authority that governs every mage in the kingdom, dictating the laws and curriculum for all magical education. Sitting at the apex of this organization is a man who also serves as the principal of the legendary Schwartz Academy. Yet recently, this absolute ruler has abandoned his duties, turning a blind eye to the federation he built. The reason was a tragedy close to home. His beloved granddaughter, Marie, had fallen gravely ill. This doting grandfather is none other than Arnulum Goldrin, a name that commands respect and fear across the continent. The old master swore a solemn oath to his suffering child. He promised to find a miracle worker, a healer capable of breaking the curse that bound her. But Will remembers the dark history of his past life. In that timeline, the chairman failed. Time ran out, and his granddaughter perished in agony. That is precisely why our protagonist is here. He infiltrates the heavily guarded estate, slipping into the girl's room like a shadow. As expected, the chairman is already at her bedside. There is no need for introductions. The old tiger already recognizes the intruder. After all, the name Will is already whispered throughout the kingdom, a prodigy with talents in healing magic that defy logic. The chairman's eyes narrow. He finds it disgraceful that a mage of Will's caliber would skulk around like a common thief. In his heart, Will does not disagree. If he did not carry the burden of the future, he never would have dared to invade such a sanctum. But etiquette is a luxury for the living. Right now, death is knocking, and Will is the only one who can answer. The old monster understands the game. Nothing in this world is free, and he demands to know what price this young intruder seeks. Will cuts him off. Every second wasted is a step closer to the grave. The negotiation can wait. The saving must happen now. Reluctantly, the chairman steps aside. Will takes his place at the bedside, his hands hovering over the patient, ready to rewrite destiny. But the air is heavy with killing intent. Arnellum's gaze bores into Will's back, sharp as a blade. The message is clear, one mistake, and Will does not leave this room alive. Taking a steadying breath, he ignores the threat and channels his mana. As the golden light flows from his fingertips, he feels the limitations of his younger body. His mana reserves are a fraction of what they once were, but raw power means nothing without control. The complex healing formulas are etched into his soul, and he executes them with godlike perfection. The atmosphere shifts. Slowly, miraculously, the girl's eyelashes flutter. Her vision clears, and the first thing she sees is not a doctor, but a savior shining with an ethereal glow. A blush explodes across her pale cheeks, and she hides her face in the pillows. Meanwhile, the chairman stands frozen, unable to believe his grandchild has returned from the abyss. Her voice, weak but steady, breaks the silence. She confirms the miracle, claiming a vitality she has not felt in years. The iron mask of the chairman cracks. Tears of sheer relief stream down the old man's face. The mountain that crushed his shoulders has finally crumbled. With the crisis averted, the two men retreat to the drawing room to discuss the future. Having witnessed a miracle, Arnellum bows to the young mage. He's prepared to grant any desire, no matter the cost. Will shakes his head. He seeks no kingdom or riches. His request is simple, entirely within the chairman's grasp. It is an undeniable fact that Will stands unrivaled in the realm of restoration. He has already reached the divine peak of healing. There is nothing left for him to learn there. That is why he craves a new path. He demands entrance to the Schwartz Academy. Arnellum is dumbfounded. The request defies all logic. To throw away a God-given talent for the unknown seems like madness. But a promise is a bond of honor, and the chairman is a man of his word. He grasps the young man's hand. The contract is sealed. However, deep within the academy's shadows, a venomous presence stirs. An instructor with cold eyes reviews the new file on his desk. He sneers at the chairman's audacity, placing a fragile healer with zero combat experience into the den of wolves. It is a recipe for disaster. The fated day of the entrance ceremony finally dawns. Gathering the fresh blood in the Academy's Grand Assembly Hall, high upon the pedestal, the chairman stands ready to preach the absolute supremacy of his institute. Schwartz Academy is not merely a school, it is a fortress dedicated to the art of destruction, boasting a curriculum forged solely for offensive magic. Its sprawling campus is a testament to power, housing multiple battlegrounds designed to push students to their absolute limits. The prestige only deepens with state-of-the-art research facilities and a colossal library, cementing its status as the pinnacle of magical education. Graduates of this elite crucible hold massive influence across the continent, ensuring the Academy receives unwavering support from the kingdom itself. Simply put, no other sanctuary on Earth offers such a perfect environment for mastering the complexities of offensive spells. Yet, amidst these predators, our main character stands as a solitary anomaly, a mere healer daring to walk a path never before trodden. It goes without saying that the road stretching before him is paved with jagged thorns and relentless ridicule, but Will is prepared to endure any hellfire to become the battle mage he yearns to be. However, the harsh reality is about to crush his expectations. The pressure mounts instantly during the very first class, and Will can be seen sweating bullets under the intense scrutiny. His task is to strike a target with a basic fire spell. He manages to manifest a flicker of flame, but it fizzles into smoke the moment it appears, and painfully. This is not the first time he has tasted such bitter failure. To make matters worse, his instructor is a despicable piece of trash who delights in trampling our boy's dignity, using his inherent weakness as leverage. The ultimatum is cruel. Will cannot attend actual classes until he hits the training dummy. He is banished to the desolate training grounds behind the school building until he proves his worth. Will pleads for guidance, insisting that without being shown the ropes, he will never grasp the proper technique. But it is clear this instructor holds a deep-seated grudge against him. To this arrogant teacher, wasting precious breath on a healer is an insult to the art of magic. Will begs him, asking only for access to the library so he might at least study the theory on his own. Once again, the bastard humiliates our boy, sneering that a mere healer has no business reading literature meant for the elite. Seizing the moment, a blonde, arrogant noble blindsides the healer with a devious magical strike, sending Will crashing painfully to the cold floor. The poor guy is left reeling from the sudden ambush, but the bully sees his pain as an invitation to torment him further. He mocks Will's fragility, treating it as justification to trample on the weak. He boasts of the Academy's offensive prestige, sneering that a soft healer like Will should get lost for daring to stain their hallowed grounds. This marks the first time I have witnessed a teacher and a bully join forces so shamelessly. They treat Will like something they stepped in, stripping him of all dignity. That night, our boy collapses onto a bench, utterly drained of strength and spirit. His desperate efforts to learn offensive magic have ended in the gutter. He knew bridging the gap between healing and destruction would be a pain in the ass, but this is a nightmare. The fundamental difference lies in the energy source. Mana is the power of the mind, a mage's ultimate weapon activated through complex formulas. This energy moves strictly according to the unbreakable will of the caster. Explosive. Volatile mana creates offensive magic. Healers, however, possess calm. Static mana, a tranquility that opposes the very nature of Schwartz Academy. Yet, this school produces the finest battle mages in the world, so surely there must be a method to refine dynamic mana. Will holds a burning conviction that he can manipulate his flow. converting his static energy into the dynamic power he needs to shatter the obstacle in his path. But he is barred from the classroom, blocked by a teacher who refuses to let him learn. Still, Will refuses to surrender. He clings to the hope of finding the one person who saved him in his previous life. Even if the entire world is against him, finding her alone would make this hellish academy worth the suffering. Unfortunately, blind hope won't guide him, so he racks his brain for a solution. Suddenly, a sharp, familiar voice pierces the night air. When Will turns to face the speaker, his heart skips a beat. Standing there is Veronica, the legendary warrior who once fought by his side. In his memories, she was one of the highest class offensive mages to ever walk the earth. He had been forced to mourn her death in the tragic war of the past. But here, in this regressed timeline, she stands before him alive and breathing. But before a single word can be exchanged, she unsheathes a blade that shimmers with enough power to cleave reality itself. She radiates an aura of absolute dominance. The fact that she is pointing that legendary weapon at his throat is a terrifying twist of fate. It turns out she is hunting a suspicious intruder on campus, and right now, Will looks exactly like the trouble she is searching for. Our boy frantically clarifies his identity, because if she swings that sword, he is going to need another reincarnation from the truck god immediately. His words reach her, bringing a tense calm to the situation, and he breathless asks if she is truly Veronica. The woman bristles with offense at his casual tone, leaving Will in a state of shock and shame. He knew she was his senior in the previous life, but he never realized the age gap was this significant. It seems our protagonist has stumbled into a misunderstanding that might be more dangerous than any magical duel. It turns out she is not just skilled, she is a monster of talent who defied all logic to become a professor at her age, a true prodigy blessed by the heavens themselves. For Will, this woman is the key to unlocking his destiny, the guiding star he has desperately sought to finally grasp the art of destruction. Seizing the moment, Will steps forward to join her class, knowing full well that she remains his final, glimmering thread of hope. He inquires about the enrollment ritual, but she ruthlessly shuts him down. She declares cold-heartedly that she has not opened a single class yet. Despite her monstrous rank, she is still a newcomer to the faculty, having soared through the ranks too quickly. She is utterly clueless about the academy's bureaucracy. For this academic year, her mandate is limited. She serves merely as an assistant instructor, tasked with answering the doubts of the student body. The administration hoped her youthful perspective would bridge the gap, making her the perfect pillar of support for disciples near her own age. Yet, a heavy silence surrounds her. It frustrates her to no end that not a single soul dares to approach her for guidance. But our protagonist sees the truth. Who would approach a woman who unsheathes her blade and radiates killing intent at the slightest provocation? However, within this fear lies a golden opportunity. Will realizes he can turn the situation to his absolute advantage. He does not need a formal classroom. He can simply exploit her duty to extract private teachings directly from a master. He strikes while the iron is hot, invoking her duty as an instructor. He asks the impossible question, how does a healer walk the path of destruction? Veronica's eyes sharpen instantly. She senses the anomaly in his mana flow. Realizing immediately that the student before her is no ordinary extra, the realization hits her. This is the infamous freshman who has been stirring up waves within the Schwartz Academy. In all her time studying the arcane, she admits she has never witnessed a healer foolish enough to covet the power of offensive magic. However, Schwartz Academy is a place of miracles. There exists a specialized method here to cultivate the volatile power known as dynamic mana. This foundation is exactly what Will needs to begin his journey, and when Veronica confirms its existence, hope flares wildly in his chest. But reality is cruel. She looks him in the eye and declares that even with that method, a healer like him has zero chance of success. The declaration strikes him like a physical blow, leaving him stunned as she prepares to explain the harsh truth. Veronica reveals the fatal flaw. His core is already saturated with an overwhelming amount of static mana. Even if he tries to build dynamic mana from nothing, his natural state will simply devour it, converting every spark back into static healing energy. Attempting to force the two conflicting energies to coexist would only result in chaos, rendering him unable to cast a single offensive spell. The path forward crumbles before his eyes. He defied time itself, only to learn that the laws of magic forbid a healer from wielding a sword. Will begins to curse his fate, regretting that his regression did not come with a user manual for this cursed existence. Yet, his will remains unbroken. If the path does not exist, he will become the supreme genius who carves a new one with his own hands. He bows to the professor, ready to depart, but Veronica's voice rings out, stopping him in his tracks before he can retreat. She picks up the thread of conversation, admitting that while the conventional laws of magic are absolute, there remains a singular, hidden exception that could allow a healer to ascend as a mage of destruction. Her words twist into a riddle that leaves his mind reeling, unable to comprehend the logic she is weaving. To demonstrate, Veronica draws her blade. It is a cold, iron instrument of war, designed for the sole purpose of severing life. She then gestures to a simple wooden bench beside them, an object created only for rest and comfort. It sounds like the ramblings of a fool stating the obvious, but hidden within her simplicity is a profound martial truth. She effortlessly hoists the heavy bench, declaring that in the hands of a killer, even a seat becomes a lethal weapon of mass destruction. Will can only stare in shock, wondering how such slender, elegant arms can possess the monstrous strength to wield that weight like a feather. Veronica's philosophy is simple yet terrifying. The purpose of an object is defined not by its creation, but by the will of its user. To drive the point home, she reaches out, her hand gently cupping his cheek in a gesture that sends a sudden flush of heat through him. For a fleeting second, it feels like a romantic scene, until she suddenly flicks the hell out of his forehead. She explains that her hand, used for comfort a moment ago, is now an instrument of pain. The epiphany strikes him like lightning. The scales fall from his eyes as he questions the very nature of his powers. Can healing be weaponized? It is a concept so radical that in all his previous life, he had never once dared to imagine it. The magical world is divided by the dogma of mana forms, but Veronica sees beyond the boundaries. She sees potential where others see limitation. She recognizes the sheer audacity it took for a healer to step foot into an academy dedicated to war. Even the turbulence within his mana whispers to her that his soul is not content with merely mending wounds. It is an observation that escapes even Will himself, making him wonder if this anomaly is a parting gift from the mysterious forces that regressed him. With cold steel pressed against his throat, she commands him to awaken. He must ignite the killing intent dormant within his soul, or be left behind. If he masters this technique, he will become an unstoppable force, crushing anyone who dares to block his path. The next dawn breaks, finding Will deep in contemplation over his master's revelations. She had woven a tapestry of logic, using countless examples to drive her point home. But what truly shakes him to his core is her perspective. She holds no prejudice against the inherent limitations of ordinary healers. Furthermore, she constructed a flawless theory right before his eyes, defying all conventional wisdom. Will begins to suspect that she utilizes this very method herself, but his epiphany is shattered by the instructor's crude shout, summoning the healer. Today's session is a crucible of combat, with one-on-one duels on the agenda. Will is finally permitted to step into the ring alongside the combat mages. Naturally, the burden of whether a healer can actually wield offensive magic is a problem he must solve alone. The corrupt instructor announces the matchups, and with malicious intent, he pairs our protagonist against Opulpus, the arrogant golden boy from the other day. Will feels a headache coming on. His opponent hails from a prestigious noble academy, backed by immense wealth and political influence. He is not merely a spoiled aristocrat, he is a prodigy in the destructive arts of offensive magic. Victory is already written in Opulpus's mind. He sneers, taunting Will about crying home to his mother after the inevitable beating. Will summons every ounce of his patience, refusing to rise to the bait of this simpleton. Even with the wisdom of a regressor and the knowledge that he is fighting a mere child, the disrespect ignites a spark of irritation. However, this is the perfect stage to test Veronica's theory in live combat. Will demands the professor's attention and firmly refuses to forfeit. Instead, he offers a bold counter-proposal, admitting he lacks talent for standard destruction, claiming this fight would be a waste of time. Suddenly, the atmosphere shifts as Will raises the stakes to a lethal level. He declares that if he falls in this match, he will withdraw from Schwartz Academy forever. The professor hides a wicked smile at the thought, but the condition remains if Will triumphs. He demands access to the standard combat curriculum. It is a brazen demand, yet Opulpus bursts into raucous laughter, finding the mere notion of a healer's victory to be absolute comedy. In his eyes, Will is lost in a delusion of grandeur, totally blind to the chasm of power between them. Tired of the chatter, the instructor accepts the terms, the stage is set, and both fighters take their positions. The signals given, Opulpus wastes no time, calmly activating his mana and manifesting a deadly array of radiant daggers. This is his signature art, knife creation magic. He stands like a discount king of heroes, summoning an arsenal of golden blades. With a wave of his hand, he launches the steel storm at will, mocking the healer's inability to defend against such overwhelming force. Yet Will remains tranquil. He assumes a serene stance, channeling his energy to unleash his own hidden dominance. In a flash, his technique activates, his perception accelerates, allowing him to weave through the deadly rain with minimal, precise movements. Behold the power of life manipulation. He controls the very biological essence within, pushing his physical stats to their absolute zenith. But this power is not merely for survival, it is a weapon forged from the principles of healing used in reverse. Opulpus cries out in disbelief, calling it a fluke, but Will stands firm, his aura swelling with intensity. Will snatches a blade from midair. With impossible precision, he parries the remaining barrage, shattering the weapons into harmless sparks. The warm-up is over. With a single stolen dagger in hand, Will prepares to end this charade. The crowd is stunned into silence. Their minds cannot comprehend a healer moving with the grace and lethality of a warrior. Little do they know, he has not cast a single offensive spell, he is simply applying the laws of restoration to destroy. Opulpus grits his teeth, desperate to save face, claiming he was merely toying with his prey this entire time. He summons an even greater number of blades, believing that quantity will somehow overcome quality. The golden rain falls again, but Will is a phantom. He cuts through the storm, shattering every construct that dares to come close. Enraged, the noble pours his mana into a single point, manifesting a colossal blade to crush his opponent under its weight. The sheer size of this construct casts a menacing shadow over the arena, a testament to his desperate rage. Will admits that Opulpus is not entirely useless. His raw talent and understanding of magic structure are genuine threats. To ensure destruction, Opulpus adds rotation to the giant blade, transforming it into a drilling missile aimed straight at Will's heart. It strikes with the force of a calamity, yet, when the dust settles, Will has blocked the attack cold, causing the noble to roar in pure humiliation. Will decides it is time to stop playing. He engages his physical reinforcement to its breaking point. He deflects the giant blade like a toy. Before Opulpus can blink, Will vanishes, reappearing instantly behind him with a chilling promise to heal him later. Will strikes, aiming a blow that would undoubtedly end the fight and shatter the noble's pride. But suddenly, the ground erupts. The corrupt instructor intervenes, raising a massive earth wall to save his precious student from defeat. The instructor intervenes, declaring the duel finished and barking at them to clear the stage for the next pair. While the arrogant noble tastes the bitter dirt of defeat, Will beams with joy knowing he has finally earned his right to attend class, much to the instructor's visible disdain. His business concluded, he dashes away, his mind already dissecting every moment of the clash. He has done the impossible. He forged his own unique offensive magic capable of crushing an elite mage, all thanks to Veronica's divine guidance. Meanwhile, the fallen noble Opulpus is helped up by the corrupt teacher, desperately begging him to bury this shameful loss so his father never finds out. They are partners in corruption, unable to swallow their pride. The scene shifts, finding Will ready to begin his new life in the classroom. Here, he can finally sharpen his theories and deepen his grasp of true destruction magic. The instructor strides in, shooting a dagger-like glare at Will before starting the lecture. So far, the curriculum is disappointingly elementary. A single homeroom teacher controls their fate. Will finds himself drawn to the magical tool creation course. Memories of his time at the Healing Academy flooding back. The topic of the day is the fabrication of volatile ice bombs. As materials are distributed, Will realizes that in his previous life, he only ever crafted items for salvation, never for destruction. But this is the domain of war. Here, he is expected to forge weapons meant to kill. Typically, this requires dynamic mana, but in the art of crafting, the specific nature of the energy becomes irrelevant. This is a massive advantage for Will, even with his overflowing reserves of static mana. Examining the components, he identifies unstable ice golem fragments and powdered flame branches. He follows the formula, but the moment he mixes the fragment, the reaction spirals out of control. Acting on instinct, Will activates body enhancement and hurls the shard away just as it detonates, scattering deadly ice spikes across the room. Though impressed by the potency, his reflexes are interpreted as a flagrant act of disrespect toward the class. The instructor lashes out, stripping points from Will's grade immediately. The class bullies erupt in laughter, Apulpus leading the pack, confirming his alliance with the corrupt teacher. But there is no time to rest. The next trial awaits in the magical creatures course. He is handed a small salamander as the instructor demands absolute focus from the lower-ranked students. Will senses danger radiating from the beast. Suddenly, the tiny monster unleashes a cannon of fire, forcing Will to dodge for his life. But it was a hallucination born of stress. The outburst draws the instructor's ire, and his trusty cauldron is confiscated as punishment. The atmosphere grows heavy. Will finally understands the true nature of his predicament. The instructor acts as a gatekeeper, allowing him entry only to torment him at every turn. Learning is impossible under this tyranny. He must find another path to survival. From the shadows, a mysterious student observes the injustice. Meanwhile, the harassment continues relentlessly. Will is forced to defend himself on two fronts against the malice of his peers and the impossible, curriculum-breaking questions of the instructor. His academic score is decimated, and he returns to his sanctuary only to find his room vandalized with mounds of garbage. When he seeks justice from the supervisor, the punishment only deepens. His right to eat is revoked. Enemies surround him on all sides. He collapses in his room, the crushing weight of the academy's hatred nearly suffocating him. For every single step he climbs toward the light, a mountain of obstacles is thrown in his path to drag him back down. Yet, Will realizes his growth is undeniable. He refuses to let these insects shatter his resolve. He has tasted victory against their elite. He has absolute proof that his dream of becoming an attack mage is within his grasp. Anchoring himself in that hope, Will remembers a crucial detail. He has finally secured the textbook. Now, he can master the material on his own terms. The next morning brings a chilling silence. The classroom is empty, save for a solitary figure sitting in the void. It is a calculated sabotage. The schedule change was deliberately hidden to isolate the unwanted ones. Frustration rising, Will approaches the girl, his sudden presence causing her to flinch. He simply seeks the truth about the missing class, suspecting foul play. The instructor has a hit list, and she is on it. They have both been marked for destruction. Sensing her terror, Will decides that outcasts must stick together. He extends a warm hand, offering the light of friendship in this dark place. The girl is paralyzed with shock before bowing her head in profound gratitude. Her name is Erica Glenn, and she becomes the first ally Will has forged in this hostile territory. She assumes his isolation is natural. After all, he's a late arrival and a mere healer, a class deemed pathetic and weak by the arrogance of this world. Will stood frozen, genuinely surprised. Despite being an elite offensive mage, she carried herself without a shred of arrogance. Observing her humility, Will realized the grim truth. The hatred directed at healers wasn't just personal, it was the twisted culture of Schwartz Academy itself. Since battle mages shed blood on the front lines, they felt entitled to look down on the healers who remained safely in the rear. It was a bitter pill to swallow. In his past life, Will had been revered as a legendary saint, a healer who held the kingdom's fate in his hands. Back then, his word was law, but here, within the walls of this combat academy, his past glory meant absolutely nothing. If he didn't fight back now, the academy's toxic hierarchy would chew him up and spit him out. Erica broke the silence, questioning why a born healer would drag himself to an academy dedicated to destruction. Will gathered his resolve. He looked her in the eye and declared that he refused to accept the destiny of servitude. He would stand on the front lines. His determination shook her to the core, but as Will explained his hidden motives, the conversation shifted to Erica's own burden. She was the daughter of a countryside noble house, with no male heir to carry the torch. Her parents feared their ancient bloodline would fade into history. Desperate to save her family's honor, she took matters into her own hands. She believed becoming a supreme war mage would secure her position as the family head. To Will, it was a noble ambition. However, there was a fatal flaw in her plan. Erica possessed absolutely zero talent for magic. Her lack of power made her a pariah. She had no allies, only bullies who tormented her day after day. That was why she clung to Will. She was relieved to find another supposed underachiever, someone to share her misery with when the grades came back. She teased him about his impending failure, joking that he was getting destroyed. But Will simply smirked, warning her that her low expectations were about to be shattered. Without another word, Will guided her through the halls, leading her to the correct classroom where the real lecture was taking place. They slipped into the lecture hall, but their luck had run out. The instructor, a man with a grudge, immediately marked them as late. Will tried to apologize, citing the sudden schedule change, but this tyrant wasn't interested in excuses. He had a target, and Will was in the crosshairs. To punish the latecomer, the instructor decided to humiliate him publicly. He pointed to the board and demanded Will solve an impossible problem. Erica's face went pale. She knew Will had missed nearly all the previous lectures. There was no way he could know the answer. Will stepped up to the chalkboard, his eyes scanning the complex formula. The teacher sneered, warning that a wrong answer would result in a severe deduction of points. From the back of the room, the class bully, Opulpus, scoffed. He was ready to watch the new kid crash and burn. But Will ignored the jeers. He entered a state of hyper-focus, the chalk striking the board like a weapon. Every stroke was precise, demanding the class's attention. Even Opulpus rolled his eyes, convinced this was just a desperate attempt to look busy before failing. But then, the magic circle on the board began to glow. Will had not only solved it, he had optimized the entire configuration. The room went deathly silent. Will had defied every expectation, shutting down the arrogance of the entire class. Even the instructor was forced to admit defeat through gritted teeth. It seemed impossible. How could the transfer student decode such high-level magic after missing every single class? The moment the hellish lecture ended, Erica cornered him. She demanded to know the secret behind his miraculous performance. Will shrugged casually. He explained that it wasn't a miracle at all. He had simply learned it from the textbook. He had read the material beforehand. But what truly terrified Erica was his next admission. He had memorized the entire tome in a single night. Will had opened the book for the first time yesterday and blitzed through it, recognizing it as a masterpiece of offensive theory. The text covered everything from fundamental mana flow to advanced combat applications. Every detail was etched into his mind. While others struggled to understand the basics, Will's past experience allowed him to absorb the knowledge instantly. Theoretical magic had always been his playground. He navigated the complex formulas without breaking a sweat. To him, the most difficult subject in the academy was as easy as reading a fantasy novel before bed. While Will was amused by the simplicity, Erica stared at him as if he were a monster. That textbook was the academy's boogeyman. It was considered indecipherable without a teacher's guidance, yet he had devoured it alone. Regret washed over her. She had branded him a failure, but now she realized the chilling truth. She was the only one at the bottom of the food chain. Desperation set in. She begged him not to leave her behind in the lowest rank. Will smiled, promising to tutor her in anything she couldn't understand. After all, they were comrades in this hostile environment. Erica beamed, grateful for his help, but in reality, Will wasn't doing this for the power of friendship. He had a calculated goal in mind. Being a loner was dangerous. He needed Erica as a pawn, and so he revealed that he needed a favor in return. The next challenge was the General Offensive Magic exam. It was the barrier that had always blocked his path to the advanced classes. Erica assumed that with his genius intellect, he would crush the exam easily. But she was dead wrong. The truth was, Will couldn't cast standard offensive magic like a normal mage, but he had formulated a brilliant, devious plan to cheat the system. To pull off this impossible strategy, Will realizes he cannot act alone. He requires Erica's assistance to set the stage. The scene shifts back to the training grounds, where the students have gathered once more. In this world, offensive magic is divided into two distinct hierarchies, general and unique. General magic relies on established formulas and structured spells, making it a power accessible to the masses through study and discipline. In stark contrast, unique magic is a power engraved upon the soul itself, much like Opulpus's signature ability to create special blades from thin air. The Academy's rigorous curriculum demands mastery over both disciplines, forcing students to refine every aspect of their offensive capabilities. However, unlike general spells, unique magic has no textbook solution. For a wild card like Will, this ambiguity is a hidden blessing. It is his golden ticket to bypass the standard rules and dominate the class. However, a massive obstacle remains. Will is completely incapable of casting general offensive magic, and his instructor is keenly aware of this fatal flaw. The corrupt teacher wears a mask of politeness, praising Will's theoretical knowledge while secretly plotting his humiliation in the upcoming practicals. The trap is set. If Will cannot demonstrate even the most basic magic, he is destined to fail the course. With a sneer, the instructor emphasizes that the objective is simple: fire a single spell at the target. He deliberately degrades the task, calling it basic, implying that if Will fails such a fundamental requirement, he has no right to graduate from this academy. The instructor collects his thoughts, recalling the boy's previous miracles. How Will weaponized healing magic for offensive maneuvers and buffed his physical stats to superhuman levels. But this situation is different. Brute strength cannot mimic a spell. The teacher simply wants this upstart to despair and drop out of his class forever. Yet, our protagonist stands his ground with a confident smile. The instructor is nearly blown away. Flames erupt around Will's hand. It defies all logic. There is no reason on earth a healer should be able to cast such high-tier elemental magic, but do not be deceived. This is not magic. It is a stroke of tactical genius from our protagonist. His entire strategy hinges on Erica, who secretly embedded a fireball into a salamander's tail using her own general offense magic. Will then conceals the burning item within his palm, carefully using auto-healing to fan the flames and prevent them from extinguishing. It is a technique akin to a reverse curse technique. By constantly healing the fuel, he creates an infinite loop of destruction and regeneration to sustain the fire. Even Erica watches in disbelief, questioning the sanity of this man, unaware that she is witnessing the tactical brilliance of humanity's greatest former healer. With perfect timing, Will cuts the healing stream the moment he opens his hand, making it appear as though he just manifested a roaring fireball from his own mana. Now comes the execution. He launches the attack. The shot screams through the air and obliterates the target with a perfect bullseye. The instructor is left trembling in fear. Will has humbled him once again. The illusion is so flawless that the teacher is fully convinced Will has mastered offensive magic. He has no choice but to award an immediate passing grade, earning Erica's applause while the spectators stand in total confusion. But in the shadows, a pulpus is seething. After class, the noble confronts the teacher, demanding answers, yet neither of them can comprehend the impossible. There is no logical way for a mere healer to have learned general offensive magic so quickly. Opulpus's pride is shattered by this defeat. He is willing to go to the extreme, threatening to complain to his powerful father and destroy the entire class if this healer is not removed. Even the instructor is stunned by the noble's ferocity as the boy walks away, leaving behind a chilling command: do whatever it takes to exterminate Will from the academy. The scumbag teacher is now trapped between a rock and a hard place. Breaking the rules carries the risk of immediate termination. He spent years clawing his way into this position at the academy, and he refuses to lose it all now. Weighing his options, he decides to gamble everything on silencing the one student trying to make a name for himself. This grown man is holding a generational grudge against a 15-year-old student, and he decides to take matters into his own hands. As the sun sets over the training grounds, the instructor summons Will to a private meeting. He attempts to threaten the boy, but Will is unfazed, treating the intimidation like a casual compliment. The instructor claims he wants to test the kid's confidence, citing the classes Will missed at the start of the semester as an excuse. The audacity is staggering. It was this very teacher who refused to let Will attend those classes in the first place. Will counters calmly, stating he has already mastered the material through self-study and his friend's notes, so there is no cause for concern. But the tyrant refuses to listen. He believes this new lesson is necessary to break Will's spirit. As the instructor, his word is law within these walls. He declares that they will participate in a proper mock battle right here and now. Will immediately senses the trap. Fighting a teacher is highly irregular. The instructor knows it is unfair, so he offers a handicap to mask his malicious intent. The condition for victory is absolute. If Will can land a single hit, he passes this deadly examination. With such a massive handicap, the instructor sneers, expecting the boy to flee in terror. The concept of defeat does not even exist in his arrogant mind. His pride blinds him completely. Meanwhile, Will stands silent, his mind dissecting the battlefield like a chessboard. With eyes full of resolve, the student accepts the duel. The trap is now set. Battle erupts instantly. The earth trembles as the instructor casts a spell from beneath, but Will is already one step ahead. He has analyzed this fighting style perfectly. Will anticipates the tectonic shift and evades the first lethal strike. But the ground mutates. Twisting like a living serpent to pursue him, the attacks are relentless, yet Will weaves through the chaos with impossible grace. Laughter rings out as the teacher mocks his evasion. The earth magic is endless, a storm of stone designed to crush him. The range of the attack is suffocating. This is a level of mastery far beyond anything he has faced before. Yet, Will does not falter. His senses sharpen to a razor's edge, entering a state of absolute focus. Will charges into the jaws of death. The instructor grins, slamming two massive earthen walls together to crush the boy like an insect. It looks like the end, a tomb of stone sealed tight around its victim. But look above, Will descends from the heavens, a silver gleam of steel in his grasp. This is his chance. The dagger strikes true towards the skull, but steel meets stone. The instructor's hidden defense blocks the fatal blow. The shockwave forces Will back. He flips away, putting space between himself and the monster. The instructor scoffs, calling his student pathetic. He unveils his ultimate defense. The ironclad armor. A pompous name for a cowardly shell. He ridicules Will's desperate struggle. He spits on the boy's ambition, claiming a lowly healer has no right to dream of battle. However, the young mage stands tall, his expression unreadable. He speaks calmly. His mastery of healing required a deep, microscopic understanding of human anatomy. Through this study, he realized a fundamental truth. Humans unconsciously suppress their true strength for survival. The mortal coil is fragile. Unleashing one's full potential would tear the muscles and shatter the bones from the inside out. The instructor rages at the lecture, but Will's logic is terrifyingly simple. If one forcibly removes those mental limiters, they can access godlike power, even if it means destroying their own body. But for a healer, self-destruction is just another injury to treat. He has found the ultimate loophole. Will smiles. He is willing to shatter every bone in his arm to land a single, devastating blow. The sheer madness of his resolve freezes the instructor in place. Will steps forward, his aura flaring as he prepares to break through the unbreakable. There is no hesitation. A scream of terror echoes as Will's fist obliterates the earthen armor into dust. The barrier shatters. The fist connects, leaving the instructor's face ruined beyond recognition in a single, brutal instant. Will stands over the fallen, whispering that no teacher decides his fate. In his heart, he thanks Veronica for showing him the path. Her guidance was the key that unlocked this monstrous potential within his healing arts. But the battle is not over. While Will reflects, the treacherous instructor launches a cowardly sneak attack from the shadows. Will evades by a hair's breadth, but the audacity of this man ignites a cold fury in his eyes. He had already won the exam. The surprise attack violates every rule of the duel. The instructor screams like a madman. He claims without witnesses the hit never happened. He refuses to accept a loss to a mere healer. Pride consumes him. He unleashes a torrential flood of magic, determined to bury the evidence of his failure. Will is done playing games. The instructor's corruption has sealed his fate. The limiters vanish once more. Will disappears, moving with velocity that tears through the sound barrier. The instructor's eyes cannot even track him. Will appears instantly before him, a fist charged with pure destruction. There is no time to summon armor, no time to beg. The judgment is here. But then, stillness. The fist hovers inches from his face. The world turns gray as the flow of time seems to freeze completely. It is not a pause in time, but an overload of pain. The impact ripples through his skull, agonizingly slow, humiliating him to his core. He is trapped in a nightmare of agony. He cannot scream. He cannot flee. He can only watch his own destruction. The moment stretches into infinity. A single second of torture expanded into an eternity of suffering. Reality snaps back. The force finally detonates, launching the man across the arena to crash violently into the earth. It was another technique of the medical arts. Will looks down at the broken man, explaining that he simply overloaded his pain receptors. In the real world, it was over in a flash. Unlike his vague instructor, let us delve into the terrifying mechanics behind that strike. The moment Will's fist connected, he didn't just inflict damage, he triggered a sensory illusion spell. A divine art originally meant to restore sight to the blind, but in our protagonist's hands, it becomes a weapon of absolute dominance. By flooding the enemy's neural network, he distorts their perception of time. 1 second in reality stretches into 100 seconds of agony. It transforms a simple blow into an eternity of torture, a mental prison from which there is no escape. With the deed done, Will masks his monstrous aura with a gentle smile, innocently asking if he has passed the assessment. Before the arrogant instructor can even stutter a reply, Will grips his shoulder, the air growing heavy with menace. He delivers a chilling ultimatum. He will scour away every trace of the instructor's prejudice against healers. The benevolent healer vanishes, replaced by a demon lord who warns that any future interruptions will lead to a fate worse than death. Will seals his promise with a beaming, innocent grin, leaving the training hall in silence. But that night, the terror sets in for the instructor. He had always viewed healers as the bottom of the food chain, fragile and weak as anything, mere servants to the offensive mages. But this student, he is an anomaly that defies all logic, possessing Grandmaster combat instincts and a suffocating killing intent. As he paces, he runs into the blonde noble, who is eager for news of Will's defeat. The noble snickers, expecting a tragedy, but is immediately silenced by the instructor's grim expression. The teacher has no patience for the spoiled heir's ramblings, warning him to abandon any vendetta against Will. It is a warning for their own survival. Treating Will as a common support mage was their fatal miscalculation. Pulpus, startled by this defiance, tries to invoke his father's name, but the instructor's fear of Will outweighs his fear of status. He essentially tells the young master to go cry to his daddy. It makes no difference now. If influence alone could stop that monster, the healer would have been expelled long ago. The Omen family may be powerful, but if they continue to provoke the sleeping dragon, Will annihilate them utterly. The noble is left seething in impotent rage, unable to comprehend how the hierarchy has crumbled so quickly. Following that legendary beatdown, peace returns to the academy for a few days. Will senses the shift. The blonde noble now walks on eggshells around him, terrified to make a move. With the pest silenced, our protagonist can finally dedicate himself to the true mission. However, satisfaction is a luxury he cannot afford. His eyes are fixed on a singular goal, preventing the apocalyptic destruction that awaits humanity. To rewrite that tragic destiny, he must transcend his current limits. While his physical enhancement is formidable, relying solely on martial arts limits his tactical options. Sensory illusions are useful, but they lack the devastating firepower of true offensive magic. He realizes he must forge a completely new path, a hybrid style. He brings this ambition to Assistant Professor Veronica. Will expects a critique of his methods, but Veronica holds up a hand, her expression serious. He braces for a reprimand, but instead, she offers him genuine praise for his recent exploits. His performance has set the faculty lounge on fire. No one can stop talking about the combat healer. A support class standing toe-to-toe with the elite vanguards, it is an unprecedented achievement. Of course, it has also painted a target on his back from the jealous traditionalists. Crucially, Veronica has kept her role as his mentor a secret from the administration. Being an outcast among the faculty herself, she knows her endorsement might only bring him trouble. Will breathes a sigh of relief. He wants to protect her reputation just as much as she aided his growth. But the professor shakes her head, admitting that she is the one who owes him a debt of gratitude. He proved that her theories on combat healing were not madness, but genius. Then, the steel sings as she draws her blade. A manic glint enters her eye as she challenges her student to a live combat trial. Will is blindsided. He came for advice, not a duel, but Veronica needs to measure his true depth. She claims battle is the fastest teacher, sending our boy into a panic as her aura flares. The enemy strikes without warning, she cries, vanishing from sight to reappear instantly before him. The blade descends like a thunderbolt, and Will barely manages to deflect the strike, his weapon groaning under the pressure. Her attacks come in a relentless torrent. She overwhelms him with a storm of lethal slashes. Even after burning all his buffs and pushing his reaction speed to the limit, he is barely surviving. But Veronica is not merely fast. No, this woman is the very incarnation of lightning itself. Her blade dances elegantly from one strike to the next. In a battle of pure endurance, Will knows he is destined to shatter first. Gritting his teeth against the heavy blows, Will realizes the truth. He has only one chance to turn the tides with his limit-breaking speed. He must catch her unaware, channeling every ounce of mana into his heels. He explodes forward. He tears through the air with thunderous ferocity. Surely the professor won't expect a suicidal charge like this, or so he hoped. But the moment his blade seeks her life, she reacts instantly, with a point-blank counter. She literally cleaves his weapon in two. The duel ends in an instant. Despite his desperate struggle, he is nothing before an elite warrior's true prowess. Veronica lowers her stance, her eyes gleaming with amusement. She never expected a healer to push her this far. However, she reveals the truth. To counter his speed, she had to rely on a magic sword technique. She thought he was a mere support mage. But this is entirely different. In terms of raw combat ability, the boy's already standing near the apex of the rankings. Yet, look at his eyes. Will finds no joy in this victory. His hunger for strength remains unsated. She nods, acknowledging his burning ambition. She understands clearly that simple physical enhancement is not his final destination. Will confesses he is trying to break his body's natural limiters, but Veronica shakes her head. As this duel proved, raw stats are meaningless. A sword is not just for wild swinging. It is made to thrust, to parry, to be an extension of the will. Healing magic must possess the same versatility. Will clenches his fists. He has racked his brain for answers, yet the path remains shrouded in darkness. The beautiful swordswoman points a finger at his chest. His fatal weakness is simple: a complete lack of blood-soaked combat experience. He lacks the warrior's intuition. In Veronica's world, 1,000 books cannot compare to a single moment on the battlefield. Even in this spar, Will sensed it, a subtle pressure that only veterans possess. Will asks if he should continue sparring to learn this feeling. Veronica smiles dangerously. No, to learn to kill. He must participate in a monster subjugation mission. The boy freezes, finally. He will step into the crucible of life or death combat. He recalls the grand competition held between the three great academies, Schwartz, Helik, and Zilburn. All three prestigious schools boast their own masters of offense, defense, and swordsmanship. Their students are expected to answer the call of duty and purge the beasts. Back at Hayek Academy, he was sheltered from such darkness, but now he has the chance to face nightmarish horrors and forge his soul in the fires of destruction. Will steels his heart. He is ready for his first true hunt. Veronica watches his determination with interest, but issues a warning. He cannot simply walk onto the battlefield. First, he must prove his worth in the selection exam, and whispers speak of a monster rookie among the first years. Will's goal changes instantly. He must crush the competition and claim the #1 spot. His eyes burn with intensity as he asks for the exam details. The rules are brutal but simple. The candidates will clash against one another. 100 hopefuls will step forward, but only the strongest will remain. A sigh escapes his lips. This school really is obsessed with combat supremacy. Back at the Hayek Healing Academy, missions were for the willing. Anyone with a brave heart could step forward. But the Schwartz Academy is a different beast entirely. Here, only the elite survive. Will takes a moment, recalling the warmth of his old days. He wonders if his former master is watching the same sky right now. Veronica interrupts his thoughts, bringing up the rumors again. This prodigy possesses mana levels that humiliate even the instructors. Taking the throne will not be a walk in the park. Will asks if the professor has seen this monster with her own eyes. She shakes her head. She has never crossed paths with him. Why? Because the boy arrogantly avoids the faculty, believing he's above their teachings. He doesn't deign to ask questions, or perhaps he simply fears Veronica's intimidating aura. Regardless, she makes a vow. She will personally oversee Will's training for the exam. This lights a fire in him. She is his golden ticket to true power. Time flows like water. The day of the selection exam arrives. Will steps into the arena, his presence transformed. The rigorous training has paid off. He radiates absolute confidence, fully prepared for war. Suddenly, a distinguished voice cuts through the crowd. It is none other than Arnolum, the chairman of the Magic Academy Alliance. The elder approaches with a bright smile. He brings joyous news. His granddaughter has been making a miraculous recovery ever since Will's intervention. The chairman bows his head slightly, apologizing. He regrets not checking in on the savior of his bloodline sooner. Will waves it off with a humble smile. He admits the transition was rough at first, but now he is completely adapted to this predator's den. In fact, his ambition burns brighter than any flame. He vows to seize the throne of the selection exam, a declaration so bold it even earns the chairman's silent respect. But suddenly, a heavy pressure descends. An instructor crashes the conversation, shattering Will's determination and mocking his noble goal as nothing more than a pathetic joke. In his eyes, this insignificant healer is insulting the very essence of his elite class. And as fate would have it, this man, Bode, is a supervisor for the field training. A face Will knows all too well from the blood-soaked memories of his past life. Back then, he was known as the Violet Lightning, a legendary war hero whose thunderous power carved his name into history during the Great War. Tragically, oil and water never mix. Their animosity transcends time itself, and the friction between them sparks just as violently in this timeline. The imposing mage looms over the healer, his voice dripping with disdain. He reminds Will that the world is teeming with combat geniuses, and this training is merely a speck of dust compared to reality. He spits insults directly in Will's face, declaring that a mere support class has absolutely zero chance of victory in a world ruled by power. Our protagonist remains stoic as a statue. The chairman intervenes, suggesting they save their energy and settle this grudge on the battlefield, not with empty words. The instructor scoffs, claiming he is simply teaching the brat a lesson. He proclaims that the true king of this exam has already been decided serious, the crown jewel of his class. This young man possesses an otherworldly beauty, looking like he stepped straight out of a high-budget fantasy epic. Sirius Blue Oat, the prodigy carrying the weight of everyone's expectations. He is the insurmountable wall that our hero is destined to clash with for the #1 spot. The tension is thick enough to cut with a knife. The chairman watches with glee as the silent pressure between the two rivals begins to boil. Without a second to waste, the candidates march into the arena. The roar of the crowd shakes the very ground, hungry for a spectacle of magic and might. Will spots Erica standing near the front lines. Shock washes over him. He never expected to see her stepping into this cauldron of chaos. However, her motivation is pure desperation. If she fails to participate, her academy privileges and allowance will vanish into thin air. But danger lurks nearby. Even Apulpus is watching our boy like a hawk, his eyes burning with malicious intent. The chairman takes the podium, his voice echoing across the stadium. He commends the students for their resilience and prays that the strongest mages rise to the top. The first round is a brutal culling. It is designed to strip away the weak, leaving only the true elite to advance to the final selection. This is total warfare. 100 students will clash simultaneously in a chaotic battle for survival. The arena seems too small for such destruction, but the chairman smiles. Unleashing his personal domain, he warps reality itself, casting them into a completely different dimension. The students are left reeling, unable to comprehend the sheer scale of the magic that has just swallowed them whole. The elder mage stands at the edge of the void like a god, scattering the participants across the vast new map like chess pieces. In the blink of an eye, Will materializes deep within a dense forest, the environment instantly shifting around him. The headmaster's voice booms from the sky. They have been scattered at random. The directive is clear: cooperate if you must, but avoid being overwhelmed by the enemy at all costs. In this game of survival, even your starting position is left entirely to the whims of Lady Luck. Will takes a moment to marvel at the chairman's prowess. To teleport this many souls instantly requires a level of mana control that borders on the divine. The exam officially begins. Our protagonist wastes no time, launching himself into the canopy and activating his presence concealment spell. He fades into the shadows, masking his aura completely. In a forest full of wolves, it is best to move like a ghost. As he scans the area, he spots a skirmish breaking out below. 3 students are already locked in a tense standoff. One summoner commands a massive earth golem that looks like a fortress on legs, while a female mage wields a gigantic fairy hammer, ready to crush anything in her path. They are so focused on their duel that they fail to sense the third player. A sorceress strikes from the blind spot, encasing them both in a prison of ice. Will watches with a keen eye. He is impressed by the versatility of these combat mages, realizing there are lessons to be learned here beyond mere victory. That freezing tactic, it was brilliant. He decides right then and there to adapt that timing into his own lethal repertoire. The dust settles, and the golem user emerges as the last man standing. He roars in triumph, celebrating a hard-fought win. But his celebration is cut short. Will drops from the shadows like a reaper. He grips the student's head and activates consciousness blockade, shutting the lights out instantly. It is a terrifying technique, flooding the target's mind with emptiness like a localized void. By manipulating the opponent's life force directly, he forces a total system shutdown. However, the grip must be absolute. A single slip, and the technique fails. This is a lethal art he inherited from Veronica during their grueling training sessions. Suddenly, his instincts scream. Will narrowly evades a barrage of flying daggers and realizes immediately who has come to crash the party. It is that same fool from before, but this time, he did not come alone. He brought a squad. Opus sneers, believing Will is just another desperate student trying to survive. With 3 attackers against 1 healer, he is certain of his victory. Opus activates his knife creation magic, summoning steel from thin air. His lackey coats the blades in a vile purple poison. The final attacker uses shadow clone magic, multiplying the threat instantly. With those poison edges, even a single scratch could mean game over for our hero. Blocking is suicide. Dozens of venomous blades launch through the air, hunting Will down like a pack of wolves. As the enemy closes in, He considers a risky gamble purging the poison with his own recovery arts. Deflecting the storm of daggers is impossible. Even with body reinforcement backed into a corner, he unleashes a technique never seen before. A massive shadow looms, a living barricade crashes down, shielding Will from the steel rain. Alpus freezes in disbelief. The very rock golem he summoned now obeys a new master. The secret lies in recovery magic's ability to infuse life into other entities. This behemoth moves not by mana alone, but through the caster's own blood coursing through its stone veins. Though it lacks complex intelligence, the healer dominates its will with his signature skill, pseudo-life imbuement. The stone giant roars into action against the trio. With a single swing, it crushes the first attacker's chest like a twig. It ruthlessly slams down onto the second target, grinding his spine into the dirt. Seeing his comrades fall, the last man freezes in terror. But there is no escape. Will flashes forward with godlike speed, gripping the enemy's face and silencing him instantly. The skirmish ends in a heartbeat. Will fades back into the shadows, commanding his stone puppet to lead the vanguard. His physical reinforcement has limits in close quarters combat. This golem is the perfect shield to cover his fatal weakness. From the safety of the rear, he surveys the battlefield. Suddenly, a colossal cyclone tears through the horizon. It looks like nature's wrath, but this is raw magical destruction. Will barely throws himself out of the blast zone in time. The attack gouges a scar into the very earth, vaporizing the golem and decimating the surrounding forest in a single breath. Through the settling dust, Will spots a solitary figure standing amidst the ruin. It is Sirius, the Academy's prodigy. His presence is so overwhelming. He looks more like the protagonist than Will himself. Such terrifying mana capacity. Will prepares to unleash a hidden card, but the exam is abruptly halted. The headmaster's voice booms across the arena, commending the survivors and declaring the end of the preliminary round. Only the top 4 have survived to advance. The true test of strength awaits them in the grand arena. Until the finals, they must recover their mana. The chairman invokes a mass teleportation spell to dismiss the students. As the teleportation light envelops them, Sirius locks eyes with Will, a gaze filled with cold, calculating intensity. Will knows he has only one day to devise a counter strategy against such a monster. In a flash of light, they are gone. Back in his quarters, Will meticulously analyze his battle data, but his peace is shattered by the arrival of Alpus and his lackeys outside. They are seething with rage, having suffered humiliation after humiliation at the hands of a mere healer. Alpus cannot accept defeat. His pride as a scion of the Omen family refuses to be tarnished by a low-class magic user. Above all, he is terrified that his father will learn of his disgraceful failures. However, even his lackeys have lost the will to fight. They abandon him, leaving the noble to wallow in his own mess. Panic turns to boiling wrath. Alpus vows to crush the healer, even if he has to resort to underhanded tactics outside of magic. Meanwhile, Will enjoys a moment of tranquility. Suddenly, a heavy knock echoes through his room in the dead of night. A chill runs down his spine as he approaches the door. It is Alpus, wearing a mask of sickeningly fake politeness. Will sees right through the performance, but the noble insists he only wants a civil conversation. He drops the act, spewing his absolute loathing for healers and admitting to the schemes he plotted to expel Will from the academy. Of course, Will had seen through every trap, countering the noble's malice with perfect precision. Now, the pleasantries are over. Alpus's face twists into a sneer as he commands Will to drop out immediately. So much for the refined grace of a noble. The beast has finally shown its fangs. Will is almost impressed by the man's obsession. Alpus rants about the prestige of his bloodline and the disgrace of breathing the same air as a healer. He recalls his own brother, a weak healer who did nothing but smile foolishly while the world mocked him. In his eyes, offensive mages are the kings of this world, while healers are nothing but pathetic servants. It is the twisted dogma ingrained in every noble house, a toxic system that breeds monsters. Alpus tries to pressure him into submission, but Will's resolve is iron. He coldly rejects the noble's demand without a second thought. But the noble anticipates this defiance. A cruel smirk forms as he mentions Will's family. His network of spies has unearthed Will's greatest weakness, a beloved younger sister whom he cherishes above all else. With a snap of his fingers, his assassins could end her life. The air in the room instantly grows heavy with murderous intent. Will's mask of indifference shatters. In the blink of an eye, he lunges, his hand clamping around the noble's throat. He slams Alpus into the floor with earth-shaking force. Moving like a phantom, he twists the noble's arm behind his back, applying pressure until the bone is ready to snap. Will stares down with eyes as cold as the abyss, his decision absolute. Ignoring Apulpus's pathetic pleas, he exerts pressure until crack. The noble's arm snaps like a dry twig. Yet, arrogance still blinds the fool, screaming through the agony. Apulpus vows revenge, swearing the Academy will never forgive this transgression. But he has forgotten a crucial detail in his blind rage. The man standing before him is not just a warrior, but a master of restoration. In a flash of light, the bone is mended, only to be shattered instantly once more. A fresh wave of trauma rips through Apulpus's soul. Will cast the healing light again, resetting the game. The noble begs for mercy, but the sickening sound of snapping bone is his only answer. It is an endless loop of restoration and destruction. Will smiles coldly, reminding him that a decision made cannot be unmade. He dared to threaten Will's sister, touching the dragon's reverse scale. For that sin, there is no forgiveness, only the rhythm of breaking bones. The relentless agony shatters Apulpus's spirit completely. He finally realizes this is no healer. He is facing a demon king in human flesh. Just like the instructor before him, the noble learns a harsh lesson. He is mere prey before a predator he can never hope to challenge. That night, Will sends the broken noble away with a cheerful smile, as if this brutal torture session never even occurred. There is not a shred of guilt in his heart. Our protagonist sleeps soundly, savoring the sweet taste of justice served. The sun rises on the day of the grand tournament. The arena buzzes with anticipation. Thousands of eyes fixed on the stage. Only 4 elite contestants remain from the first round. Among them stands Erica, a wild card who has defied everyone's expectations. Rumors say she encased herself in an inferno, a barrier of flames so terrifying that no other student dared to step close. She won without lifting a finger, forcing a default victory. But Will senses a strange disturbance in the mana. He sees through the facade. She asks for mercy, but Will is a warrior on a path to supremacy. He will show no hesitation. Erica declares her ambition to surpass her limits, and with that, the bell rings. The clash between friends begins now. She opens instantly with a roaring fireball. Will does not dodge. He meets the scorching heat head-on with his bare hands. It seems like a low-tier spell. His regeneration magic flickers, instantly knitting together the minor burns. This initial weakness lowers his guard, but his instincts suddenly scream in warning. Something is wrong. That weak attack was a bait. Erica unleashes a barrage of flame, turning the stage into a sea of crimson. Will realizes the terror of her magic. These are not ordinary flames. They refuse to fade or die out. She has mastered a technique of unquenchable fire, reminiscent of legendary myths. Though the heat is low, the duration is unnatural. Even with his infinite recovery, the stacking damage begins to drain his stamina. It is a battle of attrition. It connects perfectly to the entrance exam, where her unique fire was the key to bypassing the standard rules. Now the mystery of her first victory is solved. No one could approach her because her barrier was an eternal, unquenchable wall of fire. These undying flames mirror Erica's own stubborn spirit. The crowd gasps, finally recognizing her hidden potential. But the audience only cheers because they desperately want to see Will fall. Empowered by the noise, Erica lets arrogance cloud her judgment. She begins to believe the impossible, that she can defeat a monster like Will and claim the glory for herself. But Will shatters her delusion. He doubles his mana output, his healing aura extinguishing the undying fire through sheer force of will. She casts again, in panic, but Will steps into the trap willingly. He catches the flame, using his regeneration to endure the pain while harnessing its heat. A stroke of tactical genius. The healer now wields fists of blazing fire, turning her own weapon against her. Will winds up for a devastating strike, but Erica creates a barrier of surrender. She throws her hands up, forfeiting before the impact. The attack halts inches from her face. She is safe, and the referee declares Will the undisputed victor of the match. Despite the win, the system evaluation remains stagnant. The fickle crowd turns instantly, jeering at Erica and branding her a fraud. The poor girl, who lived her life in the shadows, collapses under the crushing weight of their scorn. Will ignores the hate. He steps forward, offering a hand and healing her bruises. A moment of gentle warmth amidst the cold arena, but the touching atmosphere is shattered. Instructor Bode stomps onto the stage, his presence radiating malice. He points a trembling finger at Will, calling him filth. He is enraged that a noble mage would surrender to a lowly healer. His thunderous voice terrifies Erica. Will narrows his eyes, questioning how such a man is allowed to teach the next generation. The professor sneers, flaunting his authority and declaring his word as absolute law within these walls. He claims his insults are merely hard truths, meant to encourage growth, masking his cruelty as education. Before storming off, he leaves a chilling warning only one student will rise to the top, and that chosen one is now walking toward Will. It is Sirius, the prodigy. He passes Will without even a glance, his aura screaming of superiority. This man worships power above all else. He aligns with Bode's twisted philosophy, setting the stage for an inevitable clash of ideals. The healer accepts the terms, but the prodigy has one final truth to confess. Sirius respects the healer's strength, yet he is determined to crush him to prove his own philosophy is absolute. Let us look at the monster within. Will remembers this name from his previous life, a mage capable of catastrophic destruction, a warrior whose victories were absolute. No one stood in his path without being reduced to dust and ashes. The fated duel between Sirius and Will begins now. Will understands the stakes. To earn the Academy's respect, he cannot just survive. He must dominate the prodigy right here. The battle explodes instantly. Sirius releases a devastating cyclone from his very position. The attack consumes the entire arena. Will is forced to dodge with godlike reflexes, countering with speed that breaks human limits. Will launches forward like a lightning bolt, closing the gap, but before he can strike, Sirius unleashes a repulsive blast, knocking him back. This is a nightmare for the healer. If he cannot close the distance, he cannot land a killing blow. Two forces of nature collide, they stare each other down, and Sirius acknowledges the healer's terrifying speed. The prodigy raises his hand, and the atmosphere screams as he fires a concentrated burst of wind. Our boy realizes the danger instantly. The previous tornado was a gentle breeze compared to this storm that rips up the very earth. He fights to keep his footing, but it is time to unleash his secret weapon. He slams his hand onto the ground. A colossal tree bursts from the soil, stunning Erica and the crowd. This power was not improvised a while ago. Will revealed this technique to Professor Veronica. He explained that by overloading a plant with life energy, he could force a rapid evolution. He had studied offensive nature magic in the past and decided to replicate it with his healing abilities. He wanted a versatile weapon, but suddenly he collapsed into the professor's arms. The mana exhaustion was instant. The ancient texts never mentioned that this technique drained the soul so heavily. Veronica revealed the cruel law of magic destruction is cheap, but creation is expensive. Converting healing mana into offensive power is the most inefficient use of energy possible. Knowing the heavy cost, Will decided to save this ace for a moment that would change everything. Back in the present, our protagonist gambles everything on this move, as his standard attacks are useless here. He relies on the giant tree, but as it finishes growing, Sirius ruthlessly slices it in half with a wind blade. This shocks our main character. Sirius possesses both the tornado that swallows armies and the storm that wipes out the land. His blades cut steel, while his wind barrier rejects anyone foolish enough to approach. The vortex protects his blind spots perfectly. Will realizes why this man is called the top candidate. But Will refuses to back down. He aims to use the chaos to his advantage and leaps straight at Sirius. The opponent instantly wraps himself in a tornado shield, mocking Will's futile attempt to reach him. And he was right. The moment our boy touches the wind, he is blasted away like a ragdoll. Sirius smirks in victory, but his smile vanishes. Pain flares, a sharp wooden stake is buried deep in his shoulder. Confusion washes over the prodigy as he demands answers. Will stands tall, revealing his tactical genius. He knew Sirius could guard the air, but he could not protect the earth beneath his feet. The giant tree was a distraction. Its roots traveled underground to deliver a stab from below. Will questions why a noble like Sirius is so obsessed with Professor Bode. While groaning in pain, Sirius reveals that the teacher is the only path to true strength. Our boy presses for the truth, knowing the dark reputation of the prodigy's family. Sirius spits out the harsh reality. In his bloodline, magical power is the only law. The strongest takes the throne. Gender and age mean nothing. This philosophy has turned his own family into a pit of vipers. Everyone is fighting for the crown, and his own father abandoned him. Listening to the teacher is his only hope for survival. Suddenly, his mana flares out of control. The pressure shocks the entire stadium, including our protagonist. The wind takes the shape of a legendary beast, A dragon manifests as Sirius screams that this ends now. The dragon locks onto our guy Will, realizes this is no longer a spar. He used to think offensive mages had an easy life, motivating him to grind harder. But the entire time, he was wrong. The truth hits him hard. Superiority is not just talent, it is the weight of lineage, the pain of the past, and the will to survive. With fire in his eyes, he declares to Sirius that he will not just participate, he is going to crush him. Sirius is stunned by his ferocity. Will slams his palm against the trembling earth, channeling his aura to summon the legendary seed, and once again, the great tree Yggdrasil begins to rise. The sapling erupts with terrifying speed, devouring mana like a starving beast compared to ordinary flora. Yet, this voracious appetite is its greatest weapon. As long as Will feeds it his own life force, the tree's growth knows no bounds. Sirius retaliates instantly. A razor-sharp wind blade slices through the air, cleaving the massive trunk in two and launching the top half skyward. But his victory is short-lived. A shadow looms over him. The severed branch hasn't died. It has mutated into a colossus, plummeting straight for his head. Will's eyes narrow. He calculates that Sirius is drained from maintaining that massive wind dragon, leaving his defenses wide open. The gamble pays off, with no mana left to shield himself. Sirius is crushed beneath the overwhelming weight of the world tree. As the dust settles, Sirius looks up to see Will standing over him, a blade leveled at his throat. The realization hits him hard. He has been utterly defeated. Will is the winner. The arena explodes into cheers. No one expected the favorite to fall, and whispers spread like wildfire about the terrifying potential hidden within our protagonist. Will extends a hand, offering respect to a worthy opponent, but Sirius turns away, his spirit completely broken by the loss. Just as Will tries to comfort him, the atmosphere turns ice cold. Professor Bode steps into the ring, his eyes burning with undisguised disappointment. With a casual swing of his leg, Bode shatters the massive tree trunk as if it were a twig, before hoisting Sirius up like a rag doll. He drags his student away, his voice dripping with venom. Sirius has failed, and his punishment will be to restart his hellish training from square one. A deathly silence falls over the stadium. Bode spins around, his killing intent washing over the audience as he roars that this lesson applies to every single one of them. His pride is in tatters. He simply cannot accept that a lowly healer has snatched the first place title from a combat mage. Will senses the situation spiraling. He steps forward to defend his rival, insisting that Sirius fought bravely and that defeat does not equal weakness. But before he can finish, Bode silences him with a glare sharp enough to cut glass. The professor stalks toward Will, sneering at his naive attempt to show mercy. He tosses Sirius aside like garbage and locks eyes with Will. In this world, he declares, strength is the only truth that matters. With twisted conviction, Bode proclaims that a loser is worth less than the dirt beneath his boots. Will recoils, disgusted to hear a master speak of his own disciple with such contempt. He refuses to back down, shouting that Bode's title gives him no right to trample on the dignity of others. Fury ignites in Bode's eyes. He sneers at Will, prophesying that society will soon discard him because a healer has no place on the true battlefield. He leans in, mocking Will's trembling hands and pointing out that his mana is already dangerously low, a fact Will hadn't even realized. Bode twists the knife deeper, stating that weaklings are nothing but parasites who drag the strong down into the grave with them. That phrase, dead weight, shatters Will's composure. It drags him back into a nightmare from his past, echoing the abuse he once suffered for his lack of power. Even in those dark memories, he clung to his belief that healers are the backbone of any party, the lifeline that keeps the vanguard alive. He screams his truth to the heavens. Without healers to maintain the balance, humanity would have been wiped out long ago. Bode releases him, his mind drifting to a blood-soaked memory. He remembers a disciple who stood alone on the front lines, buying time for others to flee, only to be slaughtered by low-level beasts. That boy died alone, trapped against a wall with nowhere to run. And Bode could only watch, powerless. As a healer, he couldn't save him. He clenches his fist, roaring that he will not let Sirius die a meaningless death like that. In a cruel twist of fate, the Mad Professor isn't entirely wrong. Weakness is a death sentence in this unforgiving world. One must train until their bones break to survive, especially as the monsters grow more bloodthirsty by the day. When the apocalypse comes, the strong cannot afford the luxury of selfishness. Even those without talent must learn to wield a blade if they wish to see tomorrow. Snapping back to reality, Will makes a reckless decision. He stares the professor down and challenges him to a duel right here, right now. Bode lets out a dark chuckle. He accepts the challenge, amused by the idea that a mere support class thinks he can scratch a combat master. The referee turns pale, stammering in panic, asking if the professor has lost his mind fighting a student. But Bode is the law here. He waves the rules aside, and as Sirius is carried off on a stretcher, the arena locks down. Will versus Professor Bode, the special match begins. Bode cracks his knuckles, the sound echoing like gunshots. He promises to show Will the true depth of his own helplessness. Sweat trickles down Will's spine. His mana reserves are nearly dry, and he is standing before a monster far stronger than anyone he has ever faced. He forces himself to breathe. He can't overpower him. He needs a flawless strategy to survive this nightmare. But Bode gives him no time to think. Too slow, he roars, unleashing a spell so potent that the blinding flash illuminates the entire stadium. As the energy crackles around him, Bode begins his lecture teaching Will the 3 absolute laws that guarantee his defeat. A suffocating aura crushes the arena as he lists the first reason: absolute dominance of range to suppress the enemy. The second, godlike speed that denies them any chance to react. And the third, the overwhelming power to end existence in a single, devastating strike. Bode prepares his final attack, sneering that the lesson might be wasted because Will might already be deafened by the sheer terror of his impending doom. Our protagonist rises from the ashes, bloodied but unbowed. He mocks his opponent, asking where that legendary one-hit kill power is hiding. He knows Professor Bode wields the devastating violet lightning, yet he refuses to kneel. To survive this duel, he must protect his core. One direct strike to his internal organs would spell instant doom from electrical burnout. He knows the risks. If his brain is fried or his heart stops, even his accelerated regeneration skills will be useless. He would be dead before he hit the ground. But Will came prepared with a desperate gambit. He engineered a blood circuit, a biological lightning rod within his own veins. He drives his blade into his own flesh. The steel acts as a conductor, channeling the lethal current through his limbs and harmlessly into the earth. A perfect ground connection. Yet, the agony is excruciating. Every nerve in his body screams as he endures the high-voltage assault. It is time to turn the tide. Professor Bode looks down on him with sneering pity. "You barely survived that, boy," he taunts, unaware of the trap being laid. Will attempts to surge mana through his muscles to launch a counter-offensive, but something is wrong. His body refuses to obey his command. The insidious nature of the violet lightning is revealed. It doesn't just burn, it severs the connection between mind and muscle, paralyzing the victim. Paralyzing. A cold sweat breaks out. Will realizes he is a sitting duck as the next bolt of destruction charges up. He barely raises a trembling hand in defense. Bode's arrogance knows no bounds. He intends to empty his remaining mana reserves just to see how long this cockroach can twitch. Thunder roars across the arena. The crowd gasps in horror as Will is engulfed in light, yet, miraculously, he remains standing. Bode's unique magic is truly a flawless weapon of mass destruction, fueling his god complex. But he forgot one thing. The protagonist's spirit cannot be broken. Defeat is not an option. Victory is the only path forward. He scrapes together the last dregs of his stamina. With a roar, he slams his palm onto the scorched earth. Rise, water treasure tree. The ancient flora erupts from the soil. It gorges on groundwater, creating a massive, hydration-filled shield to scatter the lightning's charge. However, fate can be cruel. Bode's lightning is too potent. It slices through the great tree like a hot knife through butter, sending the audience into a panic. Will stands frozen amidst the falling debris. The professor stalks forward, convinced the boy has played his final card. But wait, as Bode glances at the rotting timber, something catches his eye. Spores are blooming at an unnatural speed. A quiet relief washes over Will. The trap has sprung. In nature, a lightning strike triggers the explosive growth of fungi. Where destruction reigns, life finds a way. The lightning that destroyed the tree created the perfect breeding ground for these parasites. But rapid growth isn't their only frightening trait. They release a potent neurotoxin. Bode freezes, his own body betraying him with paralysis, just as Will's did. Fear flickers in the professor's eyes. Will waste no time. The range advantage is gone. It is time for close quarters combat. Will throws a punch with everything he has, but Bode weaves past it with terrifying speed. A heavy blow slams into Will's gut. The professor laughs. He reveals he isn't just a mage. He is a master of martial arts amplified by his unique magic. Did you think a little poison could stop me? By overclocking his nerves with electricity, Bode overrides the paralysis completely. His speed is godlike. Will crumbles to the dirt, clutching his chest. The bitter taste of defeat fills his mouth. Is this truly the end? Bode raises a fist crackling with lethal energy. Class dismissed, he roars, but suddenly an intervention. Steel flashes in the sunlight. Professor Veronica stands between them. Blade at the ready, Bode scoffs, dismissing his junior colleague with a sneer. Will trembles, on the verge of unconsciousness. But seeing her silhouette reignites a spark of hope in his heart. The duel is over. Bode, she declares, striking a defenseless student now is nothing but torture. Bode shrugs nonchalantly. He is a healer, isn't he? He can simply patch himself up. Veronica's eyes narrow. He is empty. He burned every drop of mana fighting you. Rage twists Bode's face. Move aside, he bellows, launching an attack. Veronica doesn't flinch. Aura explodes as two monsters prepare to clash. Boom! A pressure heavier than a mountain descends. The headmaster has arrived. He separates the combatants with a mere wave of his hand. He holds Bode back with his presence alone and offers a solemn apology to Veronica. Enough, he commands. The selection exam is officially concluded. He dismisses the onlookers with absolute authority. As the crowd disperses, Will tries to spark a healing spell, but nothing comes. He collapses, totally spent. Gently, Veronica scoops him up. You did well, Will. She whispers words of comfort, urging him to rest. But for Will, survival isn't a victory. It stings. The next morning, he wanders the academy halls. The memory of the power gap between him and the professor haunts him. How could humanity fall when monsters like Bode exist? The timeline doesn't make sense. He needs more power. He must become absolute. He steps into the headmaster's office. The old man greets him with a warm smile, eyeing his pristine condition. You recovered quickly. Will nods. My regeneration is tied to my mana pool. Once it refilled, the wounds vanished instantly. Excellent. The headmaster beams. Then you will have no problem with the field training starting immediately. Will blinks. No rest for the wicked. The headmaster reveals the truth. Since Will dominated the selection, he has passed, but he isn't alone. Sirius and Erica have also secured their spots. Will's eyes narrow in confusion. He demands answers. Professor Bode had declared that every single one of them failed. The headmaster smiles grimly. It was a necessary deception, a yearly ritual to plunge students into despair, forcing them to awaken their true potential in the face of crisis. The upcoming field training is a death trap. Bode played the villain to harden their resolve. His harshness was a shield, preparing them for the brutality awaiting them. Will knows the truth buried in his memories. In the previous timeline, Bode was a legendary hero, a warrior who stood on the blood-soaked front lines to the very bitter end. Now, the headmaster issues a critical command. The protagonist must forge a party. He must ally with elites from other academies as a primary attacker. Only then can he accept official monster subjugation quests. A chill runs down Will's spine. This is it. His first real encounter in this life. He will face the very nightmares that drove humanity to extinction in his past. Beasts overflowing with mana are branded as monsters. Yet, not all of them are born enemies of mankind. Some strike out of hunger or fear, fighting simply to survive in this harsh world. If only their ecology had been understood, perhaps humans and beasts could have coexisted. They could have been allies, not adversaries. But fate is cruel. In exactly 2 years, the red moon will rise, and the world will be plunged into chaos. Bathed in that crimson light, monsters will go berserk. Apex predators will unite with a single, terrifying objective: the total annihilation of the human race. And the nightmare deepens. 2 years after the initial slaughter, the Demon King himself will descend to finish the job. Humanity will be pushed to the brink. Great nations will crumble to dust, and millions will perish in the darkness. Attack mages will be thrown into the meat grinder, but the chaos will be absolute. Mages and knights alike will fall like leaves in a storm. Once the vanguard breaks, the slaughter reaches the rear. Even the healing mages will be executed, leaving the wounded to die in agony. By the time Will died in his previous life, the resistance had shattered. There was no one left to hold the line. If history repeats itself, extinction is guaranteed. But Will refuses to accept that future. He will not let that tragedy happen again. He swears an oath to surpass his former self. He will forge a strength capable of shattering the great monster invasion single-handedly. But brute strength isn't enough. He must uncover the truth behind the red moon. He will hunt down the source of this madness and destroy the calamity at its root. The headmaster sees the fire burning in Will's eyes. It is the gaze of a true warrior. He is deeply impressed. Such potential is rare. It makes the headmaster wonder, are the instructors taking the upcoming danger seriously enough? He reassures Will that every precaution has been taken. Yet, his eyes linger on Will. He expects great things from him. Later, as Will stands with Veronica, Professor Bode approaches. Will tries to express gratitude, understanding the tough love. But Bode snaps, the professor barks a retort and storms off. But he pauses. With his back turned, he grunts a command, "Don't die out there, do your best." And then, a whisper caught on the wind. He quietly thanks Will for saving Sirius. Sirius steps out from the shadows. He bows his head in gratitude. Thanks to Will, he can finally confront his weakness and evolve. As long as breath remains in his lungs, his path to vengeance is open. This time, his ambition will not vanish like smoke. Will grins, challenging him to reach new heights. They bump fists. No words are needed. The pact is sealed. Will calculates the odds. Powerful attack mages are rising. These aren't just classmates. They are vital pieces for the coming war. The preparation is over. The carriage wheels turn, signaling their departure. Hours later, the destination looms. The Dunnel Forest. The briefing begins now. Veronica lays out the mission. Their target goblins. A requested subjugation deep within the shadowed woods. She directs the students from the prestigious academies Schwartz, Heilish, and Gilburn. Then, her gaze lands on Will. He is assigned a 4-man cell, supported by an instructor. Erica speaks up, anxiety in her voice. "Who are we with?" Veronica smiles. "Don't worry, you're with Will." Erica shivers. Veronica is terrifying, but it's infinitely better than trusting her life to a stranger. The carriage halts. They have arrived at the testing grounds. As they disembark, Veronica spots them. The elites from Gilburn Academy are already waiting. Will observes the crowd. In his past life, he was a ghost, fighting alone with no connections. Suddenly, a blur of motion, a girl launches herself at Will, tackling him into a suffocating hug. "I've been dying to meet you." Will freezes, panic rising. "Who is this?" She beams, dropping a bombshell. "I'm Marie Goldrand, the principal of Schwartz Academy, and the granddaughter of the legendary Alnarum Goldrand." The protagonist stood frozen in place, his mind reeling as memories of his past life surged forward the moment he saw her. Of all people, he never expected to encounter the fragile girl he had once treated at the principal's estate here, deep within the unforgiving forest. Concern filled his eyes as he wondered how she had fared, but she flashed a radiant smile, assuring him that her days of suffering were long gone. However, her expression quickly shifted to regret as she apologized, lamenting that she never had the chance to properly thank her savior back then. He tried to wave it off as a trivial matter, but determination burned in her eyes. She insisted on repaying the life debt she owed him. She then revealed a harsh truth: the heavens had granted her absolutely no talent for magic whatsoever. Refusing to accept defeat, she enrolled in Gilburn Academy, pouring her blood, sweat, and tears into the path of the sword instead. Through sheer, relentless effort, she had clawed her way to the top, becoming the #1 student in the selection exam. She let out a playful giggle, enjoying the shock on his face. Will was genuinely moved by her transformation, remembering that mere months ago, she had been confined to a sickbed, hovering at death's door. Yet, in the blink of an eye, she had defied all odds to stand at the very pinnacle of strength. Gently taking his hand, she announced that fate had united them in the same party, vowing to become a blade that would protect him. In that heartbeat, the principal's cryptic words about taking care of her finally clicked into place. But before he could process the revelation, she eagerly dragged him along to greet the new arrivals from Heilish Academy. Watching from the sidelines, Veronica and Erica were stunned by the evident chemistry and intimacy between the two of them. Outside the carriage from Heilish, Marie called out, curious if the legendary Ulan and the student turf were inside. The door opened, and Ulan stepped out with an air of unshakable calm, greeting them with a smile as the mentor assigned to guide their journey. This was no ordinary teacher. In Will's previous life, Ulan was revered as the divine healer, the greatest restorative mage of his entire era. Realizing he was teamed up with such a legendary figure filled Will with a sense of overwhelming fortune. Next, Turf emerged from the carriage. Marie introduced herself, but the boy froze solid the moment his gaze landed on their intertwined hands. Narrowing his eyes, he immediately demanded to know who the stranger holding her hand was. Will introduced himself simply, leading Turf to instantly assume that anyone with such confidence must be a powerful attack mage. Yulin, however, threw them a curveball. He declared they were free to act as they pleased, stating he was merely there as a silent observer. Seizing the opportunity, Will stepped forward and bowed to Yulin, asking for permission to address him as master. When asked why, Will explained that he possessed the gift of healing but lacked a true mentor to guide his growth, needing the touch of a master to refine his art. Yulin's eyes twinkled with recognition, and having heard rumors of Will's potential, he readily agreed to pass down his ancient knowledge. Not wanting to be left out, Marie rushed over, pouting that if Will called him master, she demanded the right to do so as well. From a distance, Veronica watched the scene unfold, noting the surprisingly perfect harmony of this eclectic group. Soon, the real test began. The subjugation mission was issued, and the party was ordered to establish their base at a remote hut. Reports indicated a goblin nest festering deep within the woods, so Yulin, Marie, and Will prepared to march into the heart of danger immediately. Meanwhile, Turf, acting as the conventional healer, was ordered to remain at the base, safe from the front lines, just as tradition dictated. As they ventured toward the goblin spawning grounds, Marie turned to Will, questioning if he really intended to stand on the battlefield solely as a support healer. Will's expression remained tranquil as he told her to cast aside her worries. He clarified his true role. He would act as the battlefield overseer, allowing them to unleash their full power while he managed the flow of combat. Taking his command to heart, they realized this supervisor imposed no shackles on their strength, only freedom. The slaughter began instantly. In a flash of steel, Marie dashed forward, her blade singing as she decimated a massive horde of goblins in a single, fluid strike. The protagonist watched in absolute awe, his mind struggling to reconcile this goddess of war with the frail girl who had been completely bedridden just a season ago.